you fly fish, you've probably heard of April Vokey. She's done a great job building a brand. And if you don't know who she is, just Google her name, and you will be impressed with how many things she's accomplished. But it hasn't been easy. It's taken a lot of dedication, time, and just plain hard work. This episode of Fin and Fire with Jeff Mishler is just a continuation of a conversation that she and I started years ago, where we were sitting around a fire, drinking some whiskey, and talking about why we do what we do. Fin and Fire Fly Shop in Redmond, Oregon is an outdoor store unlike any other. They are the West's leading retailer of your favorite outdoor brands. FinandFire.com is your local fly shop, available 24/7. April Vokey. It's so nice to actually sit down with you. It has been years since we've actually had a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And so much has changed. So much has happened to you since we last actually chatted. And I honestly just want to, the first question right off the bat, what's a day in the life for April Vokey these days?
Well, right now, because it's 9:30 a.m., I am currently on the coffee. And day in the life today it's a whole podcasting day. I've got this wonderful episode with you, and then I'm sitting down with Dan Rooster Levens. Levens?
Oh, I know Dan.
So I don't know Dan, just only through social. So I'm excited to get to know him better.
Well, I met him. Funny story. Let's depart, and already like our lives have crossed. Nick's name is Rooster, right? So
yeah,
I met him at a bar. Surprise. In Forks, and I was hanging out up there doing some steelhead fishing, and there's this local bar I didn't know anything about, and Dan was in there with a bunch of other steelheaders, and it was kind of funny. I walked in there, and this guy goes, "Hey, you're the Skagit Master guy," and yeah, and Dan was sitting there, and "You're the Skagit Master guy," and I said, "Yeah," and introduced myself, and then Dan went off and told all these outrageous stories of steelhead fishing, like all over the place, and so I sat and was totally entertained by that guy. He's kind of a local. I don't know, everybody just gravitates to the guy. I mean, he had his own little posse, I think, when we were sitting around this bar.
Isn't he in Montana?
Well, this was Forks, Washington in, I don't know, 2004? No, wait. 2012, sorry. I had to get the year
This is
right.
why I love the podcast. I mean, you can go in not knowing anything about somebody and then walk away knowing their whole life. So that's a day in the life today.
Excellent. Well, I know that you got married and you live in Australia.
Was I married when I podcasted you? I'm sorry to cut you off, but when I saw you last.
I don't remember. I don't think you were. I don't think you were married yet.
What year was that? I definitely didn't have a baby yet.
I know, it was long before this gray hair came out of my face. I don't know what that. It's like
you're not alone. I got it going on too.
Yeah. It was, I can't remember the year. It was that long ago. And then it was years before that when I actually met you. We sat around that fire at that bar one night with all my friends.
That's right. Definitely not married at that point. Because when I met you, I was actually with my ex at the time. I was with Ben at the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
God,
love Ben. Shout out to Ben. Great guy. But so that was a long time ago.
It is. And my brain just fogs over when it gets past about 5 years. It's all muddy.
Well, I've been with Charles now for 10 years. So put it that way.
Excellent. And so, and you have a child.
And now we have a baby. Well, we've got a 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm. And you just took her to school.
I did. Yeah. She's a character. She's something else. That's for sure.
I'm glad you could meet with me. But you also have a Canadian residency.
Yeah. So look, COVID kind of threw that whole thing off a little bit, but for the most part, I spend a significant amount of time in both Canada and Australia.
Were you able to go up there this year to do some steelhead fishing? And how was it if you did?
Yeah. Well, because I lost my residency with COVID, I've had to fight to get it back this year. So there's a ton. I've been to Canada multiple times already and go back again in another 14 days, another 2 weeks. I'll be back.
Are you spending time fishing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll see how the runs look, see how the returns look, but my cabin is obviously my little happy place. So I just go up there and disappear for a while.
That's nice. Nice to have it. COVID was so silly here. They even closed down the boat ramps. So the one thing that you needed and wanted to do was to get out on the river so you could I don't know, socially distance, and you couldn't even launch your boat. I didn't really connect the dots. I don't understand why all that happened. So, I mean, it was during primetime steelhead season, and I just sat around twiddling my thumbs until the first week of May when they actually dropped the restrictions. But that was kind of a crazy time.
They didn't even factor that in. Sorry, there's some crazy birds out my window. Oh, it's black cockatoos. There's a big, beautiful. I wish you could see. He's all
Wow.
puffed up. We don't usually get black cockatoos out here. That is really beautiful. Have you ever seen a black cockatoo?
No, I live in Oregon. Yeah.
But you've seen on,
I
on
think,
posters and
don't
stuff.
they, aren't they
Cockatoos.
white? Aren't they normally
Well,
white?
that's the thing. So they're usually white. We have white cockatoos everywhere. They're a pain in the ass. They destroy my lemon tree. But right now, I'm looking at a very rare black cockatoo, and he's all puffed out. And they've got these beautiful long tails, and they make a very distinct sound. So that. Maybe that's an omen. Maybe this is good luck to the start of our podcast
Oh,
here.
it's just getting going. It's just getting going. That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's summer on the Oregon coast, and the only thing that's flying around right now is I have this one little varied thrush that attacks the window every morning. I have no idea what he's thinking. He sees his reflection and he just, right outside my office, and he just clang, 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 dives into the window. I was like, dude,
You're gonna hurt
you
yourself.
you need to go find a girlfriend because you're gonna really hurt yourself. All right. Oh, life. Well, with Canada, and were you able to get residency straightened out?
Yeah, I lost it. You can get, for people who are worried about this happening to them, you get an exception once, but because I had already used up my exception when I was pregnant. I had to fly. I think I missed it by like 3 days. I had to fly back to Australia 3 days to get the cutoff, because you're not allowed to fly too pregnant, obviously, across the world.
Yeah.
And so I used up I think you get one every 5 years or something, and I used it up then. So then with COVID, I knew I was going to get screwed. But that's all right. It's just, look, all the more reason to just do multiple trips this year. And it's been
Yeah.
fantastic. I've got no complaints.
How was the fishing? Have you?
Well, I haven't done any steelhead fishing yet
Okay.
this year. Again, we'll just see how that goes. But we were just there a few weeks ago. Went over to Vancouver Island and did some trout fishing, and it's always, trout fishing is always great in British Columbia. I think it always gets often, it's often overshadowed by salmon and steelhead, kind of like Oregon.
For sure.
But the trout fishing spectacular.
I take my little watermaster and I'll float one of the coastal streams here anytime in the summer. And honestly,
Yeah.
the cutthroat fishing is the best. It's the best fishing on the planet. I mean, I could go out and catch, 25 or 30 really nice cutthroat because no one's doing it
Yeah.
on a little whatever. It could be a streamer, doesn't matter. And I'm just thinking, well, I've traveled halfway around the world to have good trout fishing, and this is exceptional. You just got to scale down, get, little 3 weights or 2 weights, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, if you're just out for an afternoon of catch and release of little cutthroats, and I do like to keep them. I try to keep a couple of the larger ones and put them in the pan, and they're just delicious. A little salt and pepper and butter, and I'm a kid again.
Yeah. I
It's
gotcha.
oh, so good. So with the changes that have gone on in your life, um, I was wondering how, when it comes to maintaining your business and traveling and having a child and getting married, what specific challenges have you faced in trying to keep the ball rolling?
Yeah, well, my business, the biggest change I ever made was when I stopped guiding. And that was
Yeah.
well before, I think I stopped guiding even before I got married, definitely before I had a child. So that was probably in the course of my career, transitioning from guiding into something else, which, I mean, I feel like my career has kind of gone all over the place, but that was probably the biggest moment of transition. But other than that, as far as, getting married, having kids, all of that stuff, nothing's really changed. The plans pretty much stayed on track. And I think a lot of people, it kind of makes me giggle a bit, but I think a lot of people, when they think about my career, think of, the influencer side of things and
Mhm.
social media. I've read people say that before, oh, well, that my job is social media, and my job was never social media and is so far from social media that, yeah, there haven't really been that many changes over the last decade.
I don't really think of you as that. I've never thought of you as like the social media influencer, Instagram person. I always thought of you as more of an artist that decided to be an archivist. Somebody who realized that there are a lot of important stories that are never going to get told unless somebody actually goes out and captures them. And that's what I really I was just really impressed with the whole, idea behind the Anchored podcast is that you, in the early days, you went out and interviewed, people who aren't with us anymore, but icons who really laid the groundwork for everything that we do. There's obviously, innovators and people who are bent on making the next great tennis ball or whatever the heck it is we're going to be trying to make, with fly lines and fly rods or whatever. But those early interviews really helped reinforce the idea that, all of this, and we talked about this before, but all of this has been tried before. And people have been experimenting with these ideas on how to cast better, farther, faster, bigger flies, smaller flies. It's all just scales, right? It's all just the scale has changed, but those ideas and those concepts are things that have been around for a long time. So I think it was just really important to get those people recorded and get their thoughts.
Yeah. And look, it was just fulfilling. It was easy to transition out of always being on the water because you can podcast and do a lot of the, off the water things at night and still be able to put in your time on the water.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that my brain, when I was guiding, just started going so crazy. It actually started to drive me a little mad,
Mm-hmm.
like crazy,
Mm-hmm.
because you're out there and you're kind of stuck. People, when you're not in a boat and you're steelhead fishing, there's a lot of just standing on the beach and waiting, or on the shore waiting for people to work their way through a run. And after you've helped them with their casting, they don't want you. They don't always want you
Mm-hmm.
taking step by step with them. So you're really stuck in the sand, and you're not allowed to build rock castles anymore. That gets really poo-poo these days. And so you just stand there kind of going crazy. And there's only so much rubbish you can pick up. And so my brain it got to the point where I had to move both mentally and physically. And so, yeah. And so, but I just sat down with an Excel sheet and wrote out, all right, so what do I need to do to be able to make a living? And I wrote out all the 5 different ways to do it, and set myself goals and budgets, and went about my business after dark so I could still keep fishing.
Yeah. That's impressive that you had the energy after a day of being on the water with clients. I guided in Russia for a number of seasons, and then I had my own steelhead fishing business here where to your point, I found myself standing on the riverbank going, I have so many more things to do in life than watch this individual struggle with his spay rod and get mad about it. I mean, like, I'm sorry that you haven't figured this out. I've shown you everything I can, but don't get mad at me. I'm just the guy standing back here making sure you don't kill yourself with a fly.
See, you're lucky. I would have killed for someone struggling all day, because then at least I would have had something to do.
Okay.
Especially on the Dean, you'd have these guys who are all epic anglers,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't, you're there because they really need you to be able to get their trip, to be allowed on
Mm-hmm.
that water. They don't actually need your help a lot of the time. So, but anyway, I got off course there, but yeah. So I think you would ask me about, what did you ask me about? Pivot. Anyway, the transitioning into nowadays where I'm at.
How to keep the ball rolling with the changes that you've had in your life, like moving from the river to Australia, getting married and kids, and and obviously it sounds like you're very driven and you are very goal oriented, and you can organize things in such a way that you get things done. I when I look back at all the shows that you've been on and the articles that have been written and the articles you've written and the podcasts, and I mean, I don't know if I could muster that much energy to do all that. That's just amazing to me.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Excuse the cough. Sorry for people listening if I sound a little hoarse.
It's winter there, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's actually freezing. It is so cold in Australia. Nobody knows. I mean, do you know that there's snow here? It
No, I
snows
didn't know
here.
that. No.
Oh yeah, regularly. And this property I'm going to look at tomorrow, we couldn't go last week because the road was shut down with snow.
Mm.
It's just unbelievable, but it's cool. I love it.
Yeah, we've been enjoying a really nice summer, and we definitely could use some rain and some snow. But give it 6 months and we'll see what happens. It's dry here. We could go on and on about weather and the future, but I mean that'd be kind of depressing. So I'm going to move you on down the path here.
Move me on down. Take me. Where are we going?
We're down the path. So I worked in media. I'm sure that when you and I talked on the podcast, I talked a little bit about being a commercial director and working in Hollywood and having that lifestyle where you're young and you're energetic and the world's right there in front of you. You just got to take it. One of the challenges that, I'm facing, I think anyone who creates media or is always trying to move forward is I don't know if the term is staying relevant, but keeping your ideas fresh and being able to, I think just, let's use a snow analogy, just keep plowing the snow forward, right? I think it's the challenge for me is to always think about another great idea or another way to do something. And I wonder, when you have all of these things going on that you're working on, how you maintain that kind of freshness of approach.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think I know where you're going with this, and I'm just going to kind of take this and run with it if that's okay.
That's what I hoped for.
So, I found freedom and happiness when I just accepted that I am not coming up with anything new, especially as an angler. When I was like, okay, listen, I'm never going to be that. I'm really not that great at any of these things. Am I passionate? Yes. Do I work hard? Yes. Do I work smart? Yep, I think so. Am I going to be the best fly tire? No. Best caster? No. Should I really put all my energy into getting my MCI and being the best instructor? Do I really want to teach all day long? Honestly, not really. What do I want? And all of the things that I want in life, which is really honestly just time. I just want to have time. None of them relied on me being an expert at anything in particular in fishing. So I stopped trying to be an expert and just started having fun. Now, I still love education. I just don't necessarily believe that I'm the best person to always be the one doing the teaching. So because I already had all these wonderful people in my network who humbled me right away. Like as soon as I started the show, I realized very quickly I have come. I mean, you're interviewing some of these men and women who are in their 80s. They have just these incredible stories, and they've broken so many down so many barriers. Excuse the sputtering, but if that doesn't humble you quickly, then I honestly don't know what does. And so once I started meeting all of them, I realized, all right, I'm not going to really be bringing something new to the fishing table as far as fishing skills go. So why not take my strength, which is getting to know people and networking, and then turn that into something greater and really, being totally honest, weigh on their expertise. And so that's kind of what I've done with Anchored. And, I don't want to make this into a business podcast by any means, but it's like I said, as soon as I took the pressure off myself of having to be great and trying to always promote myself, which I always hated. I think
Mm-hmm.
people assume that people who self promote really love it, or they've got issues, or they've got an ego. No, it's just sometimes it's the only way to pay the bills so that you can actually, have more time. And I hated it. I hated having to pimp myself out. That's what I always used to say to Charles. I was like, oh, I've got to pimp myself out this week. I really don't want to, because it brings criticism. I get very anxious. I don't like the unnecessary attention. And so as soon as I could get rid of all of that, not have to be great or be seen, and could just kind of hide behind people who really should be seen, my entire life just changed. I
Mm.
became relaxed, fulfilled, happy, actually more successful, and I have more time.
That's almost exactly the conversation I just had with Tom Larimer.
Oh, really?
Tom was talking about, there's so much ego in all of this stuff that has to do with casting and line design and all of these things. And he says that it is so hard to maintain that level of interest when there's a lot of ego involved, because there are things that happen when that's the case that they aren't genuine. They aren't these genuine interactions. Everything's kind of loaded, like you said. I mean, there are all these other motives, and I'm not a line designer by any means. I'm not the guy who's going to create the next best whatever. I empathize and sympathize with you because I'm in a place where I enjoy meeting people as well, and I enjoy having those conversations around the fire, and oftentimes when someone hasn't made that realization that you've made and they're still struggling with kind of where they fit in on things, sometimes there's friction, and as Tom said, sometimes the ego kind of gets in the way. And so when you are able to step back and just look at this as it's just fishing, we're just going fishing, then you can take a step back and actually enjoy the process and have those experiences that you thought you were always going to have on the river, instead of getting wound up because somebody cut you off, 75 yards down the run, who really maybe didn't even know that they were doing it, but you took it like personally. It's like, that guy cut me off, and and now your day's ruined. So yeah, it's so interesting how obviously as we all get a little older and we all go off on our different adventures, that these realizations are pretty common. I mean, they're human. It's a human process that we all have to go through.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's where it's at.
that's
It's
where
nice
you
to
are.
not have to always be competing against yourself,
Yeah.
because who wants to always be striving? Look, I am all about self improvement, right? I'm always trying to be better, but I think as I've gotten older, I just would rather spend that energy because, like I said, time is everything to me.
Mm,
So I only have so many hours in a day. I'd rather take that time and energy and try to focus on improving how I treat people, or
mm,
how I treat my own body, or my flexibility, or myself, or my family.
mm,
I don't want to always be trying to improve the size of my casting loop or my married wing technique. You know what I mean? And it's one thing to do that in private. I like to do that in private, but I don't want to always have to be trying to prove it to everyone else.
mm.
Do you know what I mean? There's only
Oh,
so many hours in a day. I want to be, if I'm going to have to prove myself to other people, I'd rather do it with things that matter to me, like being kind, or,
mm,
like creating value that actually helps people, not just actually trying to show that I'm better than somebody else or better than myself the year before. So, yeah, like I said, just getting rid of the pressure has made all the difference in my own happiness.
that's great. That's great. I'm happy for you that you didn't fall into the long-term trap of, I don't know a happy fishing guide who's married. It just doesn't exist, right? I mean,
I think I might know a few, but it's
oh, do you?
hard. I
I
think so. I'm trying to think. Uh, uh, I'm sure there's somebody. I'm
There
sure.
has to be
Let
someone.
me, there's somebody. Let me think about it.
It's something I noticed a long time ago, and it's like, wow, this might not be for me. I mean, if this is what I want in my life, staying a fishing guide, particularly a steelhead fishing guide in Kamchatka, Russia, isn't going to really lead to a family. There's just,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
that's
not
hard.
going to add up. That's funny. That's funny. We've never really talked about your childhood very much. We've never really had time to. I think the day that, or the night that we were sitting around the fire just catching up, it might have been right after the Spayclave. I mean, all that stuff's kind of fuzzy, but I think maybe you had been out to the Spayclave there on the Sandy River, and then, or maybe you were doing a podcast. I can't
No,
remember, but
I was speaking at one of the clubs there.
oh, okay.
I think
I
that's what it was. It was a great night, but I remember being at a hotel nearby or some conference center
Yeah.
speaking.
Well, speaking about, that impression that other people had of you that night, for me, it's kind of a funny story because, I think we had maybe chatted a time or two before, but when you came to the fire ring and we just sat down and started talking, I had some buddies there and they didn't get a word in edgewise. And so then after you left, they're like, dude, I wanted to talk to April or whatever. It's like, I don't even know what to say because we just started talking and it was like, close the bar down and see you later. And then a few years later, we did a podcast. But that's the impact and the impression that you make on other people, is that, they want to know you and they want to chat with you and
Oh,
they want to get to, know, the real April. And so that's a good quality. And I think by finding your path, you've definitely followed your truth.
thanks.
That's my
Yeah.
impression, anyways. Um, when you were a kid, and I always ask these questions.
Dun
When you,
dun
dun,
dun.
dun, dun,
Sorry. Yeah.
when you were younger, were you as obsessed with fishing? Um, let me rephrase that. How how old were you when you realized that you were just nutty about fishing?
Yeah. Well, I was always nutty about the water. I don't know if
Yeah.
it was fishing to start. It was always the water, all water, the rain, creeks, all of that stuff. As far as the fishing goes, I'd say pretty early on. I mean, dad took me fishing when I was 3, 4. We did some trolling and I loved it. And it was all of it, right? My dad was super fun. Is My dad is super fun. So it was great just hanging out with him. And I don't know if it was the fish as much as it was the fish with dad.
Oh, that's neat.
Right. And dad's not really an angler. I mean, we laugh about it now because I ended up teaching my dad way more about fishing than dad ever taught me, but it was just fun. And so it was always very exciting just to get a bite, right? And
Yeah.
he also really played into me being a girl, right? So he'd take me to the wall and he'd let me choose the real flashy lures. There was never any, oh, well, that's not going to work. We need to have the green Jensen egg. If I wanted to buy the pink Jensen eggs and the wedding bands and the bright willow leaves, and so be it, even if they were made for pike. And so yeah, so dad was all part of it, but I just loved the excitement of what could be out there. And then I would have been about 7 and I started just kind of doing it myself. Would we go on camping trips? I'd grab the little red and white bobber and go sit down and just enjoy the adventure, whatever I could find. And then it kind of grew from there. There was a tackle shop next to the mall. So when my friends would go to the mall when we were 7th, 8th grade, the girls would go one way and I'd go into the shop, and kind of got to know the guys that way. And the rest was history. When I was 16, I knew what I was going to be doing and got my license, and that was it. I was never the same.
We just, all of us are the same. I talk to so many people who have the exact same childhood. The moment I had my driver's license, I was like, that's all I could think about. I barely got through college. I don't need to tell this story again, but that's all I thought about was steelhead fishing and hunting and all the things that go with the outdoors. When you were young, if you had a chance to be outside, did you just run out and play for, hours outside? Because that's what I did.
Well, yes and no, and not necessarily. My
Oh,
parents always say that my sister was the one who was more outdoorsy. She was the one who wanted to be out there with her hands in slugs and worms and stuff. I did a bit of that, but I was very, very artistic. I loved arts and crafts. So I would rather spend my time creating something. And even as a kid, I was very goal oriented. I was always focused on, this is going to sound really bad. This is going to sound awful, but I was big into business early on. I
mm,
mean, I was the little girl my sister was out playing and I'm out there. I was collecting like horsetails and weeds and stuff and trying to push all the perfume and the liquid out of them so I could bottle them and sell them on the street corner, right? Or I'd be out there making things out of various materials and trying to sell them. So I was out there, but I still wanted to have some sort of business attached to it. That's why it just made sense for me to get into the fishing business. I was marrying the two things that I loved the most. But we were talking about this the other day because my daughter loves to play with dolls. I hate playing with dolls. I don't like, it's not that I dislike it. I hate it. And my mom was saying, she said, when you were a kid, since the day you were born, she said, you've hated playing with dolls and that kind of stuff. You always wanted to be productive doing something, which is actually a curse because you can't ever just relax. You need to always be moving. And so anyway, we are just talking about what kind of things I really loved. It was like scavenger hunts. And it was always, being on the beach and trying to find things that had washed up. And so what my parents did early on was they put me in Girl Guides. And I mean, if I had to sum up my life as a kid, I would just say I did Girl Guides for 9 years. And
mm.
then when I was done that, I became a leader. And now Adelaide's allowed to start Girl Guides next year in like 4 months. And I've already got my name on the list to be a leader. I just love that kind of goal building, projects and having an excuse and a reason to be outside other than just relaxing,
My
get
kids
to
were
make
part.
it fun.
Yeah, my kids were part of the Trackers program. So they have
Yeah,
it
cool.
was I think it's a Tom Brown Trackers program. I think anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, he works there at the Tracker School,
yeah,
Trackers
so
Earth.
it's based in Portland there, and the kids were involved with that. I mean, for summers, and it was great. They learned how to shoot a bow. They had a blacksmithing class. I mean, they came back with these roughly pounded out, razor sharp letter opener. So whatever it was that they gave me, Dad, when you kill an elk, use it to, and it was wicked sharp, but it was, like 3 inches long and I could barely get my hand around it because their hands were so small that they had built it for their hands and not my hands. But I still have some of those. And I was really impressed with, their ability to create crafts and be totally committed to the process. And now as they're aging into, teenage years, they're less focused on that kind of summer projects. But my daughter's just like you. She's very, very, very project driven, but also, I mean, super smart and very resourceful. And she came out with totally organized. She had the world kind of figured out from day one, and she doesn't really tolerate silly play and stuff. Yeah, she's 13 now, different things matter to her now than they did when she was little. But I was always really impressed about how industrious she was. And my son's a 15-year-old kid who's just okay doing whatever. He's like, yeah, okay, that sounds cool. So there's like something missing there. I don't know if it's a gene or what it is, but my daughter has the same kind of approach to things. It's really amazing.
Like I said, it's a blessing and a curse because it really is hard to just stop. Right. And as you get older, I feel like it almost starts to accelerate and it gets even harder to stop. But it's weird, I wonder sometimes why, just back to being a kid who wants to be outside, but have it be productive. What is with that? And I do wonder sometimes. I haven't put that much thought into it, but now that we're talking about it, it's kind of percolating it. Is it because historically when we had to be outside, it was, and we would do things like make baskets or catch fish or hunt or make, do flint net, whatever it is that because we have a project, which is of course survival, right? The goal is to survive. We're making these hooks and doing all this because we want to catch that fish to survive, or we're making these bows and arrows because we want to hunt that elk to survive. Is that the goal, right? But historically was to survive, but now we've lost that goal. And so we're just desperate to find the goal. Because it's weird. Like when you think about it, so why do we, it's such a stupid, not a stupid, but a cliche question, right? Like, why do we fly fish? Why do we fly fish? I don't go to relax. That's never, when I want to relax, I go to the spa. That's just the truth of it, right? I go for the adventure. So what is it? What is it within me that needs the adventure? Why do I need to see a result at the end of the day? Is that just some sort of instinctual drive? It's surely not that I just came out. I'm not money driven. So I think people hear that I've always veered towards business and they think that it's got to be the money, but that's not it. It's just I'm goal driven, project driven. So what is that? I'm just rambling, but
no, I get it. I think about it all the time. I mean, I also gear fish. I fish with bait. I go out in the ocean and catch salmon, trolling herring. We just went tuna fishing the other day, mocking along at 10 knots, trolling these big clones, and we caught like 400 pounds of albacore. And it was a great day. And I had just as much fun doing that as I do, say, going to the river during the perfect time when the river's dropping and there's steelhead in the river. But I think about it, and for me, it's the process. And so the process starts with me getting up in the morning and it ends with me coming back and going to sleep. But in that whole process, there's the calculation of, fuel. I hope the boat's going to get out there and get back. If the fog is in, we need to use the radar. And there's just all these things that I have to consider in the process. But that process is why I do all of those things. And why I fly fish is because the process is a harder process. So I don't know if it's because I just want to do things the hardest possible way I can, or if there's payoff and there's a sense of satisfaction knowing that maybe I can do things. I don't know. I think about,
but it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to do it the hardest possible way, again, that's just because success. And I would say that it all funnels into success. So what's that success then? I mean, if we do all of this in the process and the struggle, whether it's that you're gear fishing, fly fishing, planning boats, adventuring, trying to avoid grizzlies, what is the success? And what is the success?
Getting
I know
to
for
do
me, it's what's that?
Getting to do it again. I mean,
is it though? So is that to survive the day, to get to do it again? Is that what it comes down to?
I guess if I got eaten by a bear on a steelhead fishing trip, I wasn't very successful because I didn't calculate that the grizzly bear was going to chase my ass down and eat me. I don't know. There are a lot of, I ask myself, like, why don't I love to fly fish for steelhead as much as I used to? And it's kind of to your point that once I have kind of figured out where they live, there's always a fish behind that rock. I mean, if there's fish in the river, there's always a fish behind that rock. And if I jack a cast out there on the best day of the year and no one's fished through the run, I'm probably going to catch the fish. So I guess what it is the element of discovery is gone because I've used the best fly rod on the market with the best fly line combination with a hand-tied fly that's taken me a lifetime to learn how to tie and perfect. And my system is dialed. And if I go to that spot and catch that supposed fish of 1,000 casts, but I make 2 casts and get it in the bucket and I've caught him, it's like, okay, I guess I've kind of got this figured out. And so then maybe the discovery process is what keeps me going. And so unless the rules change and someone moves the goalposts, I'm probably going to be like, oh, I kind of already done that. And life's pretty short. I'm sure there's a lot of other things out there that I could go through the process and try to figure out.
Yeah. I don't know. My brain ticks about this often, and I just wonder what it is that drives us or makes us really need to be out there. Because sometimes I feel like, I mean, it was obvious hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of years ago what the point was. It was to not die.
Right.
And now that that's been removed from us in many ways, not in every way, but in many ways, we just have life so easy, right? We get to wake up and just do and not have to worry about dying that day. Mm-hmm. Like I said, not in every case, but in the majority of us. Are we just like do we have to make these successes and these goals because we've lost that? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we're hardwired to survive. And once the challenge or the process that's in us is no longer challenging, we maybe lose interest. But to like the whole idea of catch and release, I'm
oh, this should be good. This should be good.
I
Let's
know.
hear what you're gonna say.
Well,
because I have my very next question to you before you even say that. My very next question to you is, do you, and I know you're 60, so this might just, again, this might just naturally be getting flushed out of you, but do you feel a deeper connection or a real, I'm not very well spoken this morning because I'm not totally feeling well, but do you feel the real, what's the word I'm looking for? Attachment or real guttural draw to hunting or fishing now?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I am drawn to both as long as I can eat what I kill. if I capture that fish, regardless of how I catch it, my whole point is to take it home and eat it. And if I can't, I'm like, why am I here? I know how to do this. And if I'm just out messing with that steelhead for my own ego, my own personal whatever, I'm trying to prove to myself that I can do this. I've already done that. So what am I doing? I'm just messing with a creature. And you know what's interesting about this is when I was a kid, I met this older man who was a family friend. And when I was talking about catch and releasing of trout, and it was, back when the trout populations really plummeted in Montana when I was a kid, catch and release trout fishing became mandatory on certain places where, nobody ever talked about, oh, well, now you have to release a trout because there aren't enough of them for everyone to. And this guy in our family, he looked at me and he said, so I guess you don't mind playing with your food then? And I'm like, what? Well, you're just playing with your food. If you can't keep it and eat it, you're just playing with your food. Well, that didn't really connect or resonate with me until I got a lot older, where, sometimes we have to release a fish that has an adipose on it, and you can keep the ones that don't. And then when that one with the adipose is injured because it has a hook through its face or it's through its gills or it's gonna die, that's the question. I guess I'm just playing with my food, aren't I? Or I'm just messing with this creature for fun. But then there's that capture component where you can, in fact, retain the ones that have an adipose clip. But if I'm fishing, I'm not going to speak for anyone. If I'm fishing in a place where it's all wild fish and you can't keep any of them, I'm thinking, well, there's probably a reason we can't keep any of these. And there's probably a reason why I shouldn't be just out messing with them. And the whole argument that as anglers we're the eyes of the population to ensure that these are wild places that are kept for everyone or whatever, the eyes and ears of the, I don't know if I buy that. I think that I'm at a point in my life where, I want to eat what I harvest. So hunting makes sense to me. I shoot my elk with a bow. I butcher it in the field. We pack it out. I butcher it at home, get it all put away for the year in the freezer. And that's a very clean process for me. Duck hunting, any of those hunting processes are the same way. Tuna fishing, that is a blood sport. We go out in the ocean and our whole intent is to bring the albacore back. And it is a mess. The boat is a bloody mess. Steelhead fishing with a fly, something that I've been focused on for, 45, 50 years of my life. I don't know, I'm kicking it around, and I really do not find or derive the same satisfaction that I did when I was discovering the process. It was a process of discovery where I got to go to Kamchatka and see the absolute best conditions for steelhead and fish over totally, an unmolested population. And it truly was amazing. It was eye-opening, but that was for science. In other words, we were capturing these fish, we were taking data samples and scale samples, and it's for it really had a purpose, and that the scientists were going to take this data and try to decide how these fish were to be managed. Are there enough of them? Aren't enough? What are they all about? Are they related to Pacific Northwest steelhead? So once all of those things were uncovered, I was like, well, I don't really have a desire, a need to go back to Kamchatka and do that again. I don't know. It's a very personal thing for me, and I know that it sounds like you're thinking about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you keep hitting the word on the head. It's discovery. But I feel like to me it's got to be one of those two things. It either needs to be discovery or something final. And the word I was looking for earlier was profound, and I just feel like um at least with hunting it's final. I know, like you said, it's clean it's not literally a clean process, but mentally it is. It makes sense. It's and it resonates with me emotionally. I really draw from something very deep within myself when I'm hunting. But with fishing, if there's not that element of discovery, I don't know. I love it. I'm not saying I don't love it. Please don't mistake what I'm saying. It's just different. It makes me think sometimes. And I gotta say, do you find that with this might just me be getting older, but do you find that with the world being so small now and with social media and the internet, not even social media, just the internet, knowing all the spots, when you actually sit down to look at your bucket trips and you're like, well, wait a second, there's really not that. I mean, there's lots. I'm not trying to sound spoiled, but it's just a small world when you really look at it. And something in me kind of blows on that candle, the inner candle a little bit. I'm like, oh, well, maybe there's not as much to discover as I thought there was. I kind of resent the internet sometimes for that. Because it's still exciting. Don't get me wrong. There's tons of travel to do and places to visit and definitely people to meet. Like that's meeting the different cultures and going and seeing the different villages and stuff. That's the best part to me. But I don't know. The internet's kind of zapped a lot of that excitement out of it.
Oh, totally. So to your point about discovery, I've never pursued saltwater species before, and I'm a sight hunter. When I bow hunt, it's all about what I hear and what I see. And I have a funny little story. I only met Tom McGuane one time. It was at a board meeting, and he asked me that question. He said, "Do you elk hunt?" And I said yes. And I might have even told the story to you, but he then said, "Well, don't ever go saltwater fishing, because it'll ruin you. It's all about the sight. It's all about seeing it, casting, the anticipation. Here they come, and it's that rush of that moment where you have that one opportunity. You have that one opportunity, and that's exactly what bow hunting for elk is like. I'll call in an elk, and he'll be 20 yards away, and you can't shoot him because he's blocked, mostly obscured by some trees or some brush. But then he moves, and there was that moment where maybe you didn't draw in the right moment, or you did have the right opportunity. You had your bow drawn perfectly, and he steps out, and you stop him and you shoot him, but you had one opportunity to complete the process, to capitalize on all of those things that you've been thinking about. And so that's what I have not done yet. And I know there's a lot of amazing saltwater destinations, and whether it's, GTs or permit or whatever, I'm afraid what's going to happen to me once I do that, because I might just disappear.
You'll never come back. Yeah.
I'm afraid that might happen.
It is fantastic. You're going to love it.
That's great. But that's what I think about, is that the places and the things that I wanted to do when I was a kid, places I wanted to go and the things that I wanted to do when I was a kid, I've been fortunate to be able to do it. And when I was that 13-year-old boy thinking, well, who am I going to be when I grow up? What was I? I really just wanted to live in a cabin in the mountains at the beach, near the beach, and hunt and fish, have a dog, some boats. And I've just been fortunate enough to kind of create that life and make it a reality. But again, what keeps me excited and keeps me going back is the discovery process. It's trying to figure it out. Yeah, it's like if there's something that I can try to figure out, I'm probably going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. I'm excited for you. I want to hear all about your first. Wait, you haven't done any flats fishing?
Nope.
Ever?
Nope.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
All right. I'm excited for you. Well, see, but that's one of the reasons I love Australia. Everyone goes to New Zealand and talks about
Mhm.
other fishing, but it is unbelievable down here because the the sight fishing is amazing. I mean, you get both. You can do blind fishing, you can go offshore, but there is sight fishing here. And it's hella dangerous, right? You can't just get in the water and chase a barramundi or chase a permit down because there's crocodiles and
You'll get eaten.
sharks. And so there's still that real sense of excitement down here, right? And definitely discovery. You look at the continent and you're like, wow, I mean, I don't even know how to get into there. And then you ask around, does anyone fly fish there? Does anyone fish there? No, not really, mate. It's too sharky or too dangerous or the tides are too hard. So I will say down here
Mm.
definitely started to bring me back to life. And it's funny because I think a lot of people saw me move down here and it was like, oh, well, there's the end of April's fishing career. But it did the opposite, right? Because BC Steelhead, there's a lot of pressure on them right now. And I'll tell you, you get some serious abuse if you start thinking about fishing for steelhead these days. And right, wrong, or otherwise, um, it's contentious. So
Oh,
coming down here has been very refreshing.
it's, we are surrounded by sport anglers who use every method you can imagine, and any suggestion that they might be curtailing or wrangling in a fishery just brings everybody out of the woodwork. I mean, everybody gets really upset about it, and partly rightly so, because we have been told that our tax dollars and our license dollars and all of these things are going to go to help promote and create and sustain the runs, but the runs aren't sustaining. So at some point, it feels like, as a group, as a user group, everybody's going to kind of just take a deep breath and step back and go, well, wait a minute, what's really important here? And because the resource is not infinite, and whether we're talking about cutthroat on the coast or awesome British Columbia steelhead or the Chinook salmon that are in peril right now, I mean, everything on the coast, the Chinook are seriously imperiled. I think we just need to take a deep breath and maybe everybody go out and hit a golf ball or two for a while. I have no idea. Just go out and just no, and don't make it hard for everyone to do their jobs, but also have a better, more broader perspective on what's real, and what's important. I mean, it's the fish that are in trouble. It's not your fishing opportunity. It's the resource is limited. So, I don't know.
Yep. Gotcha. Well,
You
now that
think?
I've just depressed everybody,
Oh yeah.
I'll let you bring me back up.
Oh, me too. Yeah. So around the fire,
But
that's what we do.
you're going to force me into thinking about a lot of
Hmm.
why we do a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you for that. I'll have to, like I said, I'm back in Canada in a couple of weeks, sitting in my cabin. I'll be sitting on the deck thinking, why do I love this so much? Why do I do this? But
Yeah. I think, back when my grandfather was around, and when people made things with their hands, building the cabin, the process of creating a space or creating that opportunity was all part of that process. And so that,
yes,
what I mean,
yes,
coming full circle is that, then I went out and caught the fish. And now we
yes,
have,
totally. That's the thing is it's like people like, oh, people say, oh, you're going back to BC. Are you fishing? We even started with that. But well, no, well, I'm going back to BC to my cabin to do improvements, to build an attachment, to work with my hands. My dad's a woodworker. And even here, I've just finished building my woodshed and I'm getting ready to get back into woodworking and having, you're right, it's that whole process that
Mhm.
goes along with it, right? Going to look at that property, like I said before, we were rolling tomorrow. And yeah, there's fishing on the property if this all miraculously goes through. But I'm not excited about fishing the property. I'm excited about getting back into building the cabin and having the whole discovery process, right? Going
Mhm.
out, are there fish here? Are there deer there? Coming back and rolling my sleeves up, getting dirty, building a fire pit. That it is so much more than just the fish. In talking to you now, I definitely I'm remembering and I'm feeling what gets me all worked up. It's at the end of the day, sitting back and looking what you've accomplished and
Mhm.
survived.
Yeah.
And that's the goal, right? That's the project at the end of the day.
Well, Lantani was really good at just calling us active participants. So when we hunt and we fish, we're active participants. We're part of the process. We could just as easily get eaten by a grizzly bear if we aren't paying attention. And we're part of the landscape, and that's very different than someone who just goes for a hike and gets to the end of the trail and goes, "Oh, this is nice," and then they go back and they get in their car. Yeah, they're participating, but they're not participating at a level that forces you to engage at a very basic level with everything around you. When you're hunting or fishing, if we're fly fishing for steelhead, we're immersed in the river. We're part of that system. Or if you're bow hunting for an elk, you are trying to be a bush, literally. You're just trying to, be invisible out there and use your woodcraft to be the best, most effective active participant that you can be. So I think there are, things that appeal to our souls at a level that we can't ignore or deny. But not everyone has that feeling.
I'm curious about this. So what about
Uh-huh.
a kayaker? Would they be an active participant?
I think so. Because, somewhere, a tribe long ago had to have somebody ferry materials down the river and challenge themselves in the whitewater to get. Boats have been part of subsistence existence. Without kayaks or canoes, they wouldn't have transported around. So I think that's part of a visceral connection. And I'm not saying just going for a hike isn't being an active participant. It's just the purpose of the hike is different than when I go for a hike. If I go for a hike, I'm going to have a gun. I'm going somewhere where there's going to be some prey, and my intent is to go shoot an elk or a deer or pheasants or a squirrel. I don't know. I'm participating at a different level.
So
Yeah.
playing devil's advocate here,
Yes,
would your
please.
definition of participant then involve taking from the environment? Like would you have to harvest an elk, take a mushroom, take a fish? Or could you argue, just again, I
Mm-hmm.
love this stuff. Could
Mm-hmm.
you argue that somebody hiking is also doing what has been done for millennia,
Mm-hmm.
putting your boots in the sand and the dirt, and that's really what a big part of their jobs were back then, was just getting from point A to point
Yeah,
B.
that's a good point. You don't have to harvest or you don't have to have the intent of providing to be an active participant. I don't know, it's interesting to think about that because if you just sit in the marsh and you observe, what is your purpose? If you're an observer and not a harvester, are you actively participating in the cycle of life around you? I don't know.
I don't know. See, and I think it's mad that we're sitting here now in 2022 trying to
Yeah.
put a finger on this. I mean, it was this is what I mean. I feel like sometimes we make up our own games because it was
Mm-hmm.
so easy thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't die. So
Right.
I don't know. As somebody who's not a fan of games, sometimes I get so caught up in the game of life that I just stop and go, wait, 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 wait. Am I in a game right now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is this a game? Am I playing this right? Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, and I can't remember how we even started this whole thing. And I'll be
Uh,
honest, we've definitely gone on a off rail. But yeah, it's interesting to me, and it's interesting to hear maybe Land's viewpoint on that and other people's opinions on the why.
yeah. I just I think if we're doing it for the right reasons, in other words, we're not okay, let's go back to the whole social media point. If we're not going to these places to one up our friends or to one up society or to, feed that ego, then it makes more sense that you're a true like active participant. But if your motives are not, if you have motives to just, oh, hey, I got this picture of this guy, but I can get farther out on that cliff and take a better picture.
Oh,
How
I
does
wasn't
that
even
play?
letting my brain. I'm not even thinking. Those people aren't even part of this conversation,
Okay, good.
right? Like I can't. To me, that's just not even. That's part of a game that I just am so detached from. But I mean, the real, the outdoors men and women, the people listening right now who are really out there because they really love it. I just wonder, and the reason why I'm wondering and talking to you about it now is because so I'm about to be 40.
Mm.
You're 60, as you know.
Mhm.
These it goes fast, right? And it's interesting because we evolve and change so much. Like every decade, everything's so different. And I just am curious if a lot of this is just who we are as we age. I think if I was listening to myself have this conversation 20 years ago, it'd be an entirely different conversation. And a part of me is just desperate to hang on to like 25-year-old April. So
Mhm.
sometimes I want to have these conversations just to find a way to connect back to the person I used to, because I love myself now, but I love myself then too. And she was so fun, and
Mm-hmm.
everything was so new and exciting. The discovery, again, that word, the discovery process was so amazing. And I don't ever want to let it go. And I
Mm-hmm.
am terrified that I'm going to be 60. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
pretend that you're not. I'm just going to talk to you ageless here. I'm terrified of being 60 and suddenly not having any connection to that discovery. That's then what's the bloody point then?
That,
So I'm in this weird stage right now. Charles is 51, I'm 40, and I've got a daughter who keeps things very exciting. Thank God I have her, because she really helps bring me back to being young again. But yeah, I'm terrified that I'm going to get older and be like, well, what is the point? That's my biggest fear.
when we met the first time and I did the Anchored podcast, one of the funny things was that I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I,
Right.
I, I still don't. So I don't
Right.
have any answers for you. I, I I've, September 25th, I'll be 60 years old. And if I had to say, who am I, or what am I, or what will be my legacy, I don't know what that is. I'm still making it up as I go. I'm still, so without the process, I don't know where I would be, because I'm constantly trying to create or recreate, or start another fire and put another iron in it to see how hot that iron can get. And I think that's what keeps me from just sitting on a riverbank somewhere twiddling my thumbs all day going, well, I guess that was it, and I, I have to keep doing something that seems interesting to me, and whether it's interesting to anyone else, that's really left to be seen. We'll find out, but I don't know. I don't have an answer for you when it comes to that. In 20 years, where are you going to be?
Don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah. Oh,
Isn't it
I
funny?
definitely.
I was thinking about this the other day, because again, Charles being 51, I mean, he's still in his head, he's still 25. I'm still 25. We're all still 25. Isn't it funny though, looking back,
Mhm.
like when you're a kid, looking at these older people, think and looking at them as older people, but they're just the same as you and I. I mean, they
Mm.
still, anyway. I've
No.
obviously been spending too much time with my dad. We've been having way too many conversations. Let's move on. Let's move on. Ask me about my favorite
Oh,
five weight or something.
okay. No, no, I don't think so. um, so actually, I think some of the questions I wanted to ask you are even more heady than the subjects we've been talking about. So,
Yeah, hit me with them.
yeah,
Hit me
okay.
with them.
Well, in this process, or all of these processes that you've kind of embarked on,
Mm.
what would you say was your greatest challenge looking from this point back?
Now, do you mean for me personally, or me from a business stance? Or are you lumping them into the same thing?
Well, since it seems like who you are is so wrapped up into the process and having a goal, that somewhere along the line or somewhere along the way, there had to have been a challenge that you either met or you didn't. But at that point, and maybe even it happened yesterday, I don't know. But what was the one great challenge that you remember being probably, it either took the most, you had to be the most persistent, or have the best plan, or work the hardest?
Yeah, that's great. My biggest challenge was probably getting over my trying to outgrow the April that I was perceived as in the industry, because I came on the scene pretty early on. Um, and honestly, my greatest challenge I'm not really allowed to talk about, because
No.
everyone wants, no, I will talk about it, but everyone wants me to just keep my mouth shut and say, the best thing that you can do about being a woman in the sport is pretend like you're not a woman in the sport and let yourself speak for yourself, right? Just if you mention that you're a woman in the sport, that's what people see you as. Keep it, just don't talk about it, and then no one will see you that way. And with the world now, I mean, it's so beautiful and lovely, and on the internet, people are generally, they try not to be sexist, because there's all these people who call them up on it, but it was a huge challenge. Like, the facts are the facts, and it was an enormous challenge, and I can appreciate that we've come far, and I'm thankful for it, for the sake of everybody involved. But it was a challenge, and I'm not going to sit here and say that it was not, because it was. And it's been a challenge now, if I'm being completely honest, at 40, looking at this new world and being like, that's great and all, but when all of you guys are writing that there's no sexism and sexism doesn't exist, were you there 20 years ago? Because I was, and it was horrible. And then, as you know, raising my daughter and having to raise her in this world of equality, which is a lot different than it used to be, and be expected to keep my mouth shut about it, which I'm happy to do 99% of the time, unless someone asks me outright what my biggest challenge was. But
Mm-hmm.
that was an enormous challenge. And now the challenge is trying to mentally wipe myself clear of it and try to start on a blank slate while not being jaded, because I am definitely jaded by it to some degree.
No doubt. There's no way that a man can relate at all to, and maybe some women can't really relate to what other women have to go through or have had to go through. And um, I experienced a little bit of the blowback by just having an interview with you, and that the people who knew me said things that were like, wow, I can't believe, and oh, what was that like? And I'm like, well, she's kind of just a friend, somebody I met, and she's a really great person who has her life together, and we have great conversations. But they could not unspin this whole, like, but it's April Vokey. And that, though I was not directly experiencing the fallout, um, it was really disappointing that it that it ever got to that point. And even though it seems like and it feels like it's getting better, I hope it improves drastically, when my daughter is your age, or when she's 25 and she's having, the time of her life doing things that she doesn't have to encounter, the ridiculousness. And it's just, I don't know, it's just people can't help themselves. I don't know what it is. It's a cultural, I think it's an education thing, but it's also so ingrained in culture that there has to be this dramatic shift in culture. There has to be a dramatic change and a generational change for it to not be so prevalent, because it's still there. It's, yeah.
Yeah. But that's just the honest answer to your question. So, I'd like to say that my greatest challenge has been trying to find fish or trying to get my casting top notch. But that was my greatest challenge. Now, there's tons of wonderful things that go along with that. I definitely don't want to elaborate on it. But if I had to answer your question honestly, and I feel like you deserve to know the truth, and that's my answer. But
that's what I always love. That's what I love about you. We always just like, man, we cut through the bullshit.
No, there's no bullshit.
Exactly.
Like, it's funny because even we were in the airplane yesterday and this song came on. So there's this song by Christina Aguilera. Obviously, you can tell the era I grew up in, but Christina Aguilera has this song "Fighter," right? And it comes on just yesterday in the airplane, and I was like, oh yeah, this is my jam. Because that, even when I was getting in the fishing industry, that was my song to the fishing industry. I thought to myself, I'm going to look, because the fishing industry was ruthless back then, right? They'd be like, and I don't mean just individual men, I mean the industry. They'd be like, no, we really want more women in the sport. But come on, guys. Like, anyway, we'll just let that rest and lie. But I'm listening to the song yesterday, wondering if I'm going to still feel the same way that I do about it. And I'm listening to the words and I'm like, yep, I still feel this way about the fishing industry. And I thought to myself, if anyone knew that I was listening to the song right now, all these years later, especially working with the industry so much, I wonder if they would be shocked to know that this still hits home for me. So having to not brainwash, but grow up past that has been hard. There's still deep down in my gut, there's still that 20-year-old April who's like, I am a fighter. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know the song.
I'm still singing Christina Aguilera.
And I'm not surprised that you're a fan of hers. That was that time when she was a star. She was a star.
But anyway, ask me your next question.
Yeah, I know. Okay. God, we could spin out on that one too. I really do appreciate your honesty. It's so refreshing. You're so transparent, and boy, we sure need that. So along those lines, with the facing the challenges, and the reason I asked you that question is, I'm not saying I kind of knew that that's what your challenge was, but in what I know that was a challenge. And So along those lines, having faced those challenges or that challenge, what would you say then has been your greatest success?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Hands down, without question. My business now. And I'll tell you why. Because it's not the business. I mean, if I was trying to get rich, I'd be doing something else. But I am surrounded by the most incredible people in the world, and not my community, but the anchored community, the fishing industry. It's not the industry. It's not the industry. That this is how I'm going to answer that. There was a time when I lived for the industry. And anyone who listens to that song is going to know how I feel about how that went down. That relationship is here, but, and I'll always be in the fishing industry, but it's been complicated. It's been a complicated relationship with the industry. But the people in the community of the fly fishing community, to be surrounded by them and have, be able to put everyone into this. I'm just going to say what it is. It's anchored community because obviously I've got a membership site. So I'm surrounded by these people every day. They've just brought me back to life. I'm just a whole different person. I've never been so happy. I'm fulfilled. I'm laughing. I'm happy to see them. We have regular interactive events, hosted trips. Like I love them.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are beginner anglers, there are advanced anglers, there's men, women. I live for my family, but I live for them now. I no longer live for the industry. I live for my community, and I'm in my place. Like this is where I'm supposed to be. I am just whole again. Everything that had been chipped away is back to being in one piece. I get to live through their eyes and see their reports and hear their excitement. And I'm just like, I literally just got butterflies.
Wow.
So that's hands down my greatest success.
Congratulations. I mean, I don't know, that's just really nice. I feel happy for you. I'm so happy for you.
It's been cool. No, it's been really, really, really cool. So all of it was worth it to land here.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel for people who want to be in the industry real bad, and
Mm-hmm.
they're also doing the whole living for brands and companies and magazines, and it's empty, man. Get out. Stay
Mm-hmm.
involved where you can, but get yourself surrounded by the right community for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The saying is nobody gets rich in the fly fishing business except George Cook. It's like,
George, love him. Don't make me cough.
oh my God. But you're right. The pie is just diced up so thinly. There's so many pieces in that pie, and there's not really enough to go around. And I'm still running the Skagit Master site, and I'm about to launch. I've been hung up on this last episode for it's like 3 years when you have to pay for it yourself and you restructure the way you do things, rebuilding the website, all these things. But still, with the number of members that we have and the people who are contacting and communicating me all the time, I think I shared with you that letter of that Marine who fought in Iraq, and that impression, or the impression that we made on him once he became a member of that community, he made comparisons where you guys are so cool because you have your uniform and you go out with a purpose, and then he related his Iraq tour experiences, and he was dealing with some pretty serious fallout, emotional and psychological fallout from his experience. And for him to relay that story back to me, that becoming a member of the site and getting a spay rod and learning to practice and becoming part of another process that he could focus on is what kind of saved his life. So those kinds of connections and those little bits of payback that you get, or the feedback, it doesn't even have to be payback, it's just feedback, are things that just make it all worthwhile. And I know that your efforts and what you've created is so much bigger and is so much more involved and has so many more people. But I imagine that the feedback, when it's good and it resonates, it's just a really good feeling.
Yeah. No, look, I've honestly never been happier. It's been fantastic. Great. I've got zero complaints.
Well, that's good, because I was going to ask you then the last question. I should have probably flipped them around. It's like, so, we're looking back at anything. They say that, you should live life without any regrets. We should try to live life without any regrets. I think that's just freaking impossible. I don't think you can really live life without regrets, because, if I turn left at the stop sign and I get hit because I turned my blinker on, I'm definitely going to regret that. There's no way that you can get through life without having some regrets. So I was going to ask, in this entire process, I'll share mine too. I mean, obviously, to be fair, in this entire process, is there a regret that stands out? And you just kind of go, man, I wish I would have done that differently.
Yeah, I mean, to regret, I feel like that's something that like lives with you forever, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a regret. There's nothing that I wake up and go, oh my gosh, I wish I had done that differently. I can see the bright side and everything. I believe in, I make lemonade out of the most tart lemons, right? Like I can find something positive in almost anything. As long as there's not a child involved, I can find something positive in it. Look, I mean, the usual, right? Like I wish that I maybe I was a little less, maybe when I was younger, I wasn't quite as determined to get my point across or having to be right, because I would always want to make it clear that I was heard. Like if someone would say something stupid on social media, I'd have to clap back. And do I regret it? No, not necessarily. I think it's made me who I am. But as far as no, I don't think, let me think about this for a sec.
Yeah.
Would I have done anything differently? No. I mean, there's some things that were stupid. I did some stupid things. I've done some cringeworthy things. I've definitely done some projects that are just ridiculous. Like usually I was pressured into them and I just didn't have the balls to say no. But they don't plague me. I can't be perfect. If I was perfect, then I would never learn what to not do next time. Every single thing that I've done, let's just put it this way. Every single thing that I've done that makes me kind of go, ooh, yuck. Why did I say or do that? Has just taught me to not say or do that in future in bigger platforms. So I've always failed, or I've always believed in failing forward. If every time that I do make a mistake, it's just helped to push me forward and teach me what not to do in future. It's not a regret. It's just a life's lesson.
That's it's just a really great way to put that, because I was thinking that not advocating for myself in other moments was kind of a regret that I had. That there were times professionally, like if I was working on a project in Los Angeles, where I may have shown that I did not approve of whatever was happening, but I didn't feel strong enough to just put my foot down and say, no, I strongly believe that this is the way that I should proceed, or that we should proceed. If my job is this, I believe that, and then take the risk, or whatever it is that goes along with it. But I'm thinking
But
about
did anyone
that.
get really hurt in that situation?
I mean, there would be times when money would be lost. I mean, large,
Okay, well,
bits of money, but that's just money. It doesn't,
that's just
no,
money.
no, honestly, not that people got hurt, but that
Okay.
maybe my confidence in the future was probably affected by not advocating for something in that moment, because it's a learned process, and then the feedback that you get, either it's a reward or there's always something that comes from that. As you say, it's like paying it forward. The only way to get to where you're going is to actually, do it. And I think that's where, if anyone who knows me well says, "Are you kidding me, Jeff Mishler, not advocating for himself? You're crazy."
That's the point though. So
Right.
did that quote unquote regret help to teach you in future that you don't ever want to look back and miss that opportunity again? And so therefore now you advocate for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a test for everyone every day, though.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff, I did the stupidest project in the whole world. And I'm bringing this up because I podcasted Derek Bird last week, and I rolled in. If anyone has seen this, it is the most cringeworthy, embarrassing, disgusting, yes, I'm throwing it out there, project I've ever been involved with. And it was the one I did with Mark Crapo for the film festival.
Hmm.
If that's all you've seen of me and you don't like me, I totally get it. I wouldn't like me either. But I rolled in to do this film, and they wouldn't tell me. The people who were producing it, who shall remain nameless, weren't telling me what the project was. And I'm organized. So I was like, I'm rolling in, I'm flying in. What am I doing? And then they had this entire scripted show, and I knew something was wrong when I rolled in, and they handed me a bottle of Jack Daniels, because that's my drink of choice. And they go, we're sorry. Like in advance, we're sorry. Sigh. What am I in for? And then, of course, I get handed this absolute garbage script thing that I need to do for a fishing film festival. Anyway, and I should have said no, and I knew better at that time in my career. I should have said no. And the way that they did it, it was all, each scene was filmed not sequentially, so I couldn't put it all together. I didn't really know what was happening. Anyway, and because I didn't want to jade or have any issues with my relationships, I did it anyway. And that situation, even though it was a little bit later in life, taught me that I will never, ever, ever again say yes. So yes, it was cringeworthy, and yes, it was stupid, and probably definitely a regret. But I learned from that moment on, the feeling I had in my stomach of how sick I was and how I felt taken advantage of, that I would never do that again. And so, and I've held true to that. It's probably been, it's been a number of years, probably only 7 or 8 years now, but I've never once again said yes to something that I was uncomfortable with ever from that. So you live and you learn from it, right? You feel awful and then you just don't do it again. Or is that a regret? Maybe. I think it's just called learning lessons.
Yeah. I think, regret, we probably just need to change the word. It's not regret. It's something
like
else.
Regret goes on forever, doesn't it?
I think
what would the word be for it? Did you have any second thoughts? That sounds a lot less permanent, doesn't it?
I paused at the thought of possibly, I don't know. I didn't really, and I don't really follow you that closely when it came to, all the little blurbs and movies and all that stuff. I just,
thank goodness.
No, I don't. I don't.
April, stay out of the movie scene. Good Lord.
I don't. I never really got that involved with it, but I was and am still aware of, the good things that you're doing, and that's why we're talking.
Oh, so. Good. Thank you. Well, no one's hurt in the process, but
no. But do you know how long we've been talking now? It's been like a while.
I know I've got to be podcasting Mr. Rooster here in 11 minutes. So.
I know. So I don't even know what to say. We could sit here all day, or for a couple of days probably. And God, please don't break out the Jack Daniels, because then we'll never go to bed.
Oh, you'll really get me contemplating life then. If you think it's bad now in the morning with a cup of coffee, wait till you get a cup of Jack and glass of Jack in my hands. But did you have was there anything else?
No.
I feel like I just hijacked it with a.
No, it was great. And honestly, it was one of the most honest and sincere conversations I've had in a very long time. I just really love that about you, is that we just, like I said, we get through the bullshit pretty quickly and just get right down to what's important. And so that's always been my, a pleasure of mine, just to be in the same space talking to you. So I thank you so much. And I hope you had a good time.
Always, since the first night around the campfire. No, it's great. I feel like we don't catch up enough.
I know. Well, let's make it happen, because maybe I can come down to Australia and you can show me some of those fishing spots.
Yeah, or New Zealand or BC. I mean, any of the places.
Well, I'm available. I have lots of free time now.
Yeah, well, we've got lots of room around the campfire, especially these days.
Great. Well, thank you, and I'll check in with you again, and we'll resume this conversation, I am sure.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone listening. And sometimes when it's unexpected conversation, it can be a bit of dribble on my end. So, or dribble.
Oh.
Anyway, it could be a little bit of me just spewing and not really thinking before I speak. So, but it's nice though to be on the other side of the mic. Sometimes I'm out of practice. I'm not so great at talking about myself as much as I am asking other people questions. But it's nice. It makes me think sometimes as well, and people tuning in, I really appreciate it. So thank you to everyone who listened, made it this far.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful. Thank you. Fin and Fire with Jeff Mishler is made possible by Fin and Fire, the fly shop based in Redmond, Oregon. If you haven't already, go to finandfire.com. You'll find the best selection of Simms, Sage, G. Loomis, and all your favorite brands. And after you've checked out all the cool things at finandfire.com, go to anchoredoutdoors.com and see what April's been up to. That's anchoredoutdoors.com.